Brain hacks for faster learning. The goal is not faster learning. The goal should be faster understanding. And the only way you understand something is by executing against what you've read or what you've learned. If you want to truly understand something, you need to be able to teach it to someone else. The goal is not to learn how to read faster or to learn faster. The goal is to understand faster. And how you understand something faster is by knowing the subject matter well enough to be confident, to be able to stand in front of somebody and actually teach it to them. That's the goal. So, brain hacks for faster learning? No. Brain hacks for faster understanding. That's your goal. So, let's look at that concept of understanding. How do you go from what you think you should be doing in terms of learning faster to actually what you should be actually doing is understanding faster? So the best way through to understanding is actually execution, is actually taking what you've read and talking about it, trying to teach to someone else. So I'm going to take two examples here from two books that I've recently read. The first book is Think Again by Adam Grant, and the second book is Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb. And I'm going to take just 3 pages from the start of those two books, two chapters within those books, and I'm going to explain them to you in my understanding. You'll be the judge, obviously, ultimately, about whether I am teaching you well enough so that you understand. But I 100% guarantee you that after I've attempted to teach you what I've read, that I will 100% know better and know more and have more understanding of what I was reading than if I was just to read it and if I was just to take notes. That's not learning. And that ultimately will serve me no good in the long term. What I actually want to do here is cement what I learn long term in my memory. So what actually happens is I can recall that at any time. And the only way I can do that is combine with what I read into emotion. And the best way to combine it with emotion is through teaching. And okay, I'm teaching here um, the YouTube channel. You can do it with somebody face to face, a friend of yours, family, a colleague. But it's the only way to cement long-term learning and increase understanding is through bringing emotion to what you've learned. So let's try it out here. Let's look at 2 chapters and see how we get on. So this is from Adam Grant's book, Think Again. It's chapter 3, and it's the subtitle is The Joy of Being Wrong. So this is about an experiment that was run in the fall, the winter of 1959 at Harvard, and it was run by a prominent psychologist who gathered some sophomores together under the pretense of being involved in a scientific experiment that looked at how personality develops and how psychological problems can be solved. So what they thought they were getting into was that their beliefs would be challenged. And the researcher, Henry Murray, was a trained physician and biochemist, but he had become disillusioned in his field that he didn't think other scientists were looking at how people navigate through difficult interactions. So what he decided to do was set up an experiment in the laboratory himself to see how people would behave when it came to difficult interactions. So the students were given a month to go away and write about their own personal philosophy and their core values and guiding principles. And what they thought would happen was that they would be paired with another student and that they would be given that student's guiding philosophy and core beliefs a couple of days before they would be both put into a room to debate each other's philosophies. So that's what they thought was actually happening. But in reality, the study was modelled on psychological assessments from World War II. So Henry had been previously lieutenant colonel in the army, and he had been responsible for vetting potential agents at the Office of Strategic Services, which was the precursor to the CIA. So in those situations, he would send potential agents down to a basement under a bright light to be essentially interrogated. And the interviewers would be waiting for the potential agents to say something wrong, and then they would scream and shout at them, "You're a liar." And for those who couldn't take it, they got kicked out, and for those who actually could withstand the onslaught of abuse, they got the gig. So this is what the students, this is what they were going into. They had no idea what they were being led into. So the Henry picked a wide variety of different personalities and different mental health profiles, and he gave them all different code names depending on those personalities, from drill, quartz, locust, lawful. Um, so what happened was they were put in a room with a law student, and the law student was in cohorts with the people who were running the experiment, Henry. And the law students were told to show no mercy to the students in terms of interrogating them, tearing apart their guiding principles and core values. For 18 minutes, the law students tore into the students, and it was obviously a very different experience than what they were expecting. So Henry described this situation as stressful interpersonal disputation, and obviously it made some of the participants very angry and very anxious as the law students, tore into them. But what happens here is that some of the students naturally felt very stressful and anxious, but some of them actually enjoyed the process. Some of them came out of it and reflected on it many years later, 25 years later, and some went as far as describing the whole process as fun, and some described it as not in the least bit stressful. And they were aware that whatever core values they had or whatever view on life, it was their sophomore views of life, so it was open to being attacked. But some of them found it very stressful. So Adam Grant was very curious about the people who didn't find it stressful, who found it actually quite fun. He said, "What kind of person? Where can I find them? Can I talk to the people who were originally involved?" And unfortunately, all of the scientific documentation is still sealed off, so he couldn't. So he went about looking for similar type people, and he found some in a Nobel Prize-winning scientist and two election forecasters. And he said that these type of people weren't just comfortable about being wrong. You see, they actually enjoyed being wrong, and he thinks that this was an opportunity for us to understand or to learn something from them, and to learn about how to be more grateful and accepting in moments where we discover that our beliefs may not be true. Now, he finishes the chapter, and I'll read it verbatim here. He said, "The goal is not to be wrong more often." So the goal is not to be wrong more often. It's to recognize that we're all wrong more often than we'd like to admit. And the more we deny it, the deeper the hole we dig for ourselves. So that's the kind of key piece from the start of this chapter. The goal is not to be wrong more often. The goal is to recognize that we're all wrong more often than we'd like to admit. And if we persist in defending our positions, even though we know we're wrong, the hole we're digging ourselves into just gets deeper and deeper. So here's the story from the book Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb. This is from chapter 5, and again, it's only the first couple of pages in that chapter. Two brothers, George and John. John is 25 years old and works as a clerk in the personnel department of a large bank. He looks after the relocation of employees. He has a predictable income, he has benefits, he has 4 weeks annual leave, annual vacation, and every 25 years he gets a gold watch. Every month he gets paid into his bank account £3,082, and with that he pays the mortgage, he pays the utilities, he buys some feta cheese, and he has a little bit left over for savings. He wakes up on a Saturday morning thinking life is good, and is generally anxiety free. That was until the banking crisis. When the banking crisis came along, he discovered how vulnerable his situation actually was, as he saw people within the bank that had had long tenures lose their jobs. And he also saw that people, particularly aged 50 and over, who lost their jobs, found it very difficult to recover. His brother, George, is a taxi driver, and he drives a black cab. around London. He spent 3 years learning how to become a taxi driver, and now he has a license to do that. His income is not as consistent as his brother's. It's actually very volatile, and he knows that on any given day he doesn't know what he's actually going to earn when he's going out to drive. But if you look at his income over the course of a full year, full 12 months, and compare it to his brother's, they actually earn around the same amount. But the the view of the brother George, the taxi driver, is that he's in a lot more um, you know dangerous position because his income is not fixed. Um, so actually, he's wrong in this. So Nassim Taleb goes on to say that uh, the central illusion in life, and this is a lot of people have this illusion, is that randomness is risky, and that's a bad thing, and that it is a bad thing, and that eliminating randomness is done by eliminating randomness. He goes on to talk about different types of professions or artisans as they call them. So taxi drivers, prostitutes, carpenters, plumbers, dentists have all some volatility, but they are actually rather robust in their in you know to experiencing minor professional black swan events as they call them. And these black swan events are something that can come along and cause a major interruption to your day-to-day life. I suppose the black swan event that to some extent was predictable, but nobody saw coming at the same time, was COVID-19. So we all knew there was another pandemic coming, but it was all a surprise when it actually happened. Um, and what he goes on to say, and again I'll read verbatim here a bit again, is that nature loves small errors, um, which without which genetic variations are impossible. But humans don't. So nature loves small errors, but humans don't. And hence, when you rely on human judgment, you're to the mercy of mental biases that disfavors anti-fragility. So we humans are afraid of the second type of variability and naively fragilize systems. We try to take nature out of our systems. We try to make them robust by making them less fragile. But what we're actually doing is making them more fragile by actually trying to make them less fragile. Um, and he goes on to say, in other words, a point worth repeating every time it applies, this avoidance of small mistakes make the larger ones more severe. So the more we try to kind of smooth over a system, the more we're making it liable to actually fall over completely by a bigger issue. So one has the illusion of stability, um, but is fragile. So one of the brothers has the illusion of stability, but is fragile. So the person who works in the bank thinks everything is fine until a major event comes along, and then suddenly the carpet's pulled from under their feet and they're not fine at all. And the other has the illusion of variability, but is actually more robust and even anti-fragile. So he will react to his environment on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. He will get feedback from his environment if he's not making money or if that person is not making money, and they will learn to adapt in small increments as opposed to the fragility being taken out of the system completely until a massive impact comes in. And so the more variability you observe in an open system, the less black swan prone it is. So two different brothers, there are two brothers, two different professions. One had a perception that they were living in a very predictable world, and the other had the perception that actually there was an awful lot of variability in their worlds, and that it was more stressful. But ultimately, because there's anti-fragility built in to the taxi driver, because they constantly receive feedback on an ongoing basis and adapt to their environment, they are actually less open to black swan events. Those black swan events, as we can see, like COVID, have been can be pretty traumatizing on the people involved in it. So there you go, two excerpts from two different chapters, explained as well as I understand them, and I know, okay, I read them a little bit, but they are fixed much more in my memory now than if I had just read them and taken notes and not tried to explain them. And that's the goal for you. If we come back to the original brain hacks for faster learning, the goal should not be and should never be faster learning. It should be faster understanding. And the only way that you're going to understand at a faster pace is to actually take what you've read, take what you think you've learned, and actually try and explain it to someone else, whether that's in a video to yourself, even a video to your YouTube channel, to a friend, to a colleague. And it's only by understanding where you'll see the gaps, and believe me, there will be gaps, to what you think you know versus what you actually know. Okay, so just to wrap it up again, brain hacks for faster learning. Nope, that's not what it should be. That's not what you should be focused on. You should be focused on brain hacks for faster understanding. That's all for today, folks. Thank you very much for listening. If you've enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate a comment and let me know how you approach the whole area of learning versus understanding. Or if you like the video, just give it a like. And if you'd like to see more and hear more of these videos, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you.